Stop the tape. Dr. Phil's hand shot up, freezing every camera operator in the studio. Just stop. The audience fell into absolute silence. In 20 years of broadcasting, he never looked like this, completely stunned, struggling to process what he'd just heard. A 16-year-old girl sat on the couch, clutching a single house key in her trembling hands, tears streaming down her face. Her mother beside her had gone pale, unable to meet anyone's eyes. What this teenager had just revealed about why their family home was sold wasn't about foreclosure, debt, or divorce. It was something far darker, something that would haunt everyone in that studio for years to come. The confession that followed would become one of the most devastating moments in Dr. Phil history. 48 hours earlier, the segment had seemed straightforward. Family loses dream home, teen daughter blames mother. Read the production notes. Sarah Mitchell, 42, had written to the show desperate for help. Her relationship with her 16-year-old daughter Emma had completely deteriorated after they'd been forced to sell their family home 6 months ago. Emma refused to speak to her, had dropped out of school, and spent every night crying in her room. She won't even look at me anymore, Sarah had told the pre-interview producer, her voice breaking. We lost everything, and she thinks it's my fault. I just want my daughter back. The story seemed familiar: financial hardship, family tension, a teenager acting out. Dr. Phil had done hundreds of similar episodes. The team scheduled it as a standard family reconciliation segment. But Dr. Phil's instincts told him something was off from the moment they walked onto the stage. Emma sat as far from her mother as the couch would allow, arms wrapped tightly around herself. She wore an oversized hoodie despite the studio heat, her eyes fixed on the floor. Sarah kept trying to reach for her daughter's hand, but Emma would flinch away each time. Emma, Dr. Phil started gently. Your mom says you haven't spoken to her in 6 months. That's a long time to carry anger. Help me understand what happened. Emma's jaw clenched. Silence stretched across the studio for nearly 30 seconds, an eternity in television time. The audience shifted uncomfortably. We can take our time, Dr. Phil continued, leaning forward in his chair. But I can't help if I don't understand. You want to know why I hate her? Emma's voice cracked, raw with pain. You really want to know why we had to sell the house? Sarah's face went white. Emma, please. No! Emma's head snapped up for the first time, eyes blazing. You wanted to come here, Mom. You wanted Dr. Phil to fix this. So let's tell him the truth. Dr. Phil felt the shift in the room. That moment every experienced therapist recognizes when you're about to hear something that changes everything. Emma, whatever you need to say, this is a safe space, Dr. Phil said, his voice dropping to that calm, authoritative tone that had guided thousands through their darkest confessions. Take your time. Emma pulled something from her pocket, a single brass house key. Her hands shook as she held it up. This is all I have left of our home. The house where I grew up. Where my dad... Her voice broke completely. She took 3 shuddering breaths before continuing. Where my dad died. Sarah started crying, but Emma wasn't finished. Everyone thinks we sold the house because of money. That's what Mom tells everyone. Financial difficulties. That's the lie? Emma, please don't do this here. Sarah whispered, but Dr. Phil raised his hand. Let her speak, Sarah. The studio audience was completely still, sensing they were witnessing something profound. My dad died of cancer 2 years ago. Emma continued, each word seeming to cost her something. Stage 4 pancreatic. 6 months from diagnosis to... She couldn't finish the sentence. Mom took care of him at home. Hospice came, but mostly it was just her. In their bedroom. Our bedroom was right next door. Dr. Phil's expression shifted. After decades in this chair, he was beginning to understand where this was going. I heard everything, Emma whispered. Every night for 6 months. His pain. Mom trying to comfort him. The sounds he made when... She stopped, pressing her fist against her mouth. I was 14. I heard my father dying through a wall, every single night, and I couldn't do anything. The camera operators, the producers, the audience, everyone had forgotten they were making television. This was something else now. After he died, I couldn't sleep in that room anymore. I couldn't walk past their bedroom. Mom would find me sleeping on the couch, on the bathroom floor, anywhere but my room. Because all I could hear was... Dr. Phil stood up and walked to the edge of the stage. "Stop the tape," he said quietly. The studio went completely silent. This wasn't protocol. In 20 years, Dr. Phil had never stopped mid-segment like this. He turned to his producer in the wings. "Get our trauma counselor here. Now." Then he looked at Sarah, who was sobbing into her hands. "Is this why you sold the house?" Sarah nodded, unable to speak. Dr. Phil sat down directly beside Emma, breaking every rule of staging and framing. The cameras scrambled to adjust. "Emma, look at me." His voice was soft but firm. She raised her tear-stained face. "What you experienced is called secondary trauma. You witnessed your father's suffering, and that house became a monument to the worst 6 months of your life. Am I understanding that correctly?" Emma nodded, her breath coming in gasps. "And your mother sold the house to try to give you a fresh start? I thought..." Emma's voice was barely audible. "I thought she sold it because she wanted to forget him. Like she was erasing Dad. I screamed at her that she was a terrible wife, that Dad would hate her for selling his house." Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. Sarah's sobs became audible throughout the studio. "Emma, baby, no. God, no. I sold the house because I couldn't watch you suffer anymore. You weren't sleeping, you weren't eating. I heard you crying every night just like you heard your father. I would have burned that house down if it meant you could heal." Dr. Phil let the silence breathe for a moment. The audience was openly crying now. "Emma, did your mother ever tell you why she sold the house?" he asked gently. Emma shook her head. "She just said we needed a fresh start. I thought..." Fresh tears spilled down her face. "I thought she didn't love Dad anymore." "Sarah." Dr. Phil turned to the mother. "Why didn't you tell her?" "Because I didn't want her to feel guilty." Sarah's voice cracked. She was already blaming herself for not being able to help him. "I didn't want her to know that I sold our home where we'd made every memory with him, because watching her suffer was destroying me." The key in Emma's hand slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor. Either of them reached for it. Dr. Phil picked it up, holding it between them. "This key represents more than a house. It represents your father, your memories, your grief, your guilt." He looked at Emma. "But it also represents your mother's love. She gave up the house that held every memory of her husband because she loved you more than those memories." Emma's face crumpled. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Sarah crossed the couch in an instant, pulling her daughter into her arms. "No, baby. There's nothing to be sorry for. Nothing." The studio erupted in tears. Audience members, crew members, even the hardened camera operators were wiping their eyes. Dr. Phil stood, giving them space, his own eyes glistening. What happened next is something no one in the room, or watching at home, saw coming. Dr. Phil turned to the camera. "I need everyone to understand something. What you're witnessing right now is the cost of silence and grief. This family has been drowning separately when they should have been swimming together." He looked back at Sarah and Emma, still locked in each other's arms. "Here's what's going to happen. My team has already contacted Lighthouse Trauma Center, one of the best family grief counseling programs in the country. They specialize in secondary trauma and complicated grief. You're both going together, starting next week. The show is covering all costs." Sarah looked up, stunned. "Dr. Phil, we can't afford." "It's done," he said firmly. "This isn't negotiable. You've both been carrying unbearable weight alone. It's time to put it down." He turned to his producer again. "Bring out the box." A production assistant appeared with a small wooden memory box. Dr. Phil placed it on the table between mother and daughter. This is for both of you. Inside is a journal and materials to create a memory book about Emma's father. Together. Not separately, not in silence, but together. You're going to honor him, grieve him, and heal from this, as a family. Emma picked up the key from where it had fallen. Can we put this in the box? Dr. Phil smiled, the first smile since the segment began. That's exactly what it's for. The emotional release was palpable. You could feel the weight lifting from the studio itself. Dr. Phil addressed the audience directly. I want everyone watching to understand something crucial. Grief doesn't have a timeline. Trauma doesn't have an expiration date. Emma was 14 years old, listening to her father die, with no tools to process that horror. Sarah was losing her husband while trying to protect her daughter. Neither of them did anything wrong. They just didn't know how to talk about the unspeakable. He turned back to them. The house is gone, but your father, your husband, isn't gone from your lives. He lives in every memory, every story, every moment you choose to honor him together. That key isn't about a building. It's about the love that filled it. Emma held up the key. Dad gave this to me when I turned 13. He said, "This is your home, always." I thought Mom took that away from me. Your mother gave you something more important. Dr. Phil said softly. She gave you a chance at a future. Your father would be so proud of her for that choice, and he would be so proud of you for having the courage to speak your truth here today. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. The session ended with Sarah and Emma still holding each other, the memory box between them, the keys safely inside. As they left the stage, Dr. Phil watched with that expression he reserves for the moments that remind him why he does this work. During the commercial break, he pulled his team aside. Follow up on this family. Monthly check-ins. I want to know they're getting the help they need. Robin McGraw, watching from backstage, approached her husband. That was one of the hardest ones. That was one of the most important ones, Dr. Phil corrected. Those two have been living in the same hell, separately, for 2 years. Today they finally found each other in it. 3 months later, the show received a letter. Dr. Phil read it on air, with permission from Sarah and Emma. Dear Dr. Phil and team, Emma and I just finished our 12th session at Lighthouse. We've cried more in 3 months than we did in 2 years, but we're crying together now. We created a memory garden in our new backyard. Nothing fancy, just a bench and some of his favorite flowers. We sit there together and talk about him. Really talk. Not the sanitized version, but the real him. The way he sang off-key, the dad jokes that made Emma groan, the way he held my hand during chemo. Emma is back in school. She's seeing a therapist individually too. She still has nightmares sometimes, but now she comes to me instead of suffering alone. The key is in our memory box along with photos, his wedding ring, and letters we've written to him. You asked on the show if I regretted selling the house. The truth is I don't. That house held our happiest and our most painful memories. Our new house is smaller, simpler, but it's ours. We're building new memories here, not to replace him, but to honor him by living. Thank you for giving us the words we couldn't find and the help we couldn't afford. Thank you for letting Emma speak her truth and for helping me hear it. With gratitude, Sarah and Emma Mitchell. Dr. Phil folded the letter carefully, his voice thick with emotion. This is why we do this. Not for ratings, not for drama, but for moments like this. When silence becomes speech, when isolation becomes connection, when grief becomes healing. The legacy of that episode extended far beyond one family. The Lighthouse Trauma Center reported a 300% increase in calls from families dealing with secondary trauma. The episode gave permission to grieve messily, to struggle, to ask for help. Dr. Phil would later say in an interview, "In 20 years of doing this show, you learn that the most profound moments aren't the ones where I have all the answers. They're the ones where I create space for people to find their own truth." Emma didn't need me to tell her what happened. She needed permission to say it out loud. And Sarah didn't need me to tell her she was a good mother. She needed her daughter to understand why she made an impossible choice. The house key remained in that memory box, but it had become something different. Not a symbol of loss, but of love. Not a reminder of what was taken, but of what was given. Sarah had given up the house that held her husband's ghost so her daughter could have a future. Emma had given her mother the truth so they could heal together. The real reason the house was sold wasn't foreclosure, wasn't financial ruin, wasn't divorce or downsizing or any of the simple explanations people give when the truth is too painful to speak. The real reason was love, complicated, sacrificial, misunderstood love. And in that moment when Emma's voice broke over a simple brass key, when Dr. Phil stopped the cameras, when a mother and daughter finally found each other in their shared grief, that was when healing began. Not because the pain disappeared. Not because the memories faded. But because they finally stopped carrying it alone. That's the power of truth. That's the power of connection. And that's why, even in a world of scripted television and manufactured drama, some moments remain devastatingly, beautifully real.